All right. It's a new day in Buffalo. It's a new day for the Buffalo Sabres, and the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show is live here on Tuesday, December 16th, 2025. I'm your host, Chris Baker. You can find me on X at Sabres Prospects here, as always, with your Sabres beat writer for The Athletic. That's Matthew Fairburn. You better get over to The Athletic. Time's running out for this holiday season. If you want to get the sports lover in your life, that subscription to The Athletic, where you can get comprehensive coverage of all your favorite sports teams, players, and all sorts of other goodies over there at The Athletic. Get over there now. There's always a deal, and you won't regret it. If you're watching this show on YouTube, hit that like button. It's very critical that we get as many likes as possible on this show. It grows the show. It keeps me motivated to get up early and do this show every day. Matthew is always itching to get a show in. Subscribe to the Sabres Prospects YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when a new episode of the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show is ready to go. And you can find us on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And it's the holiday season. If you could, please leave a 5-star review. All right, Matthew Fairburn, what do you want to talk about? Anything going on with the Buffalo Sabres? It is a new day, like I mentioned at the top. But of course, I'm being facetious because some big news dropped. It's not every day that we get to talk about new leadership with the red-hot Buffalo Sabres, winners of 3 games in a row. And now there's a new man at the top of the hockey operations food chain.
Well, I was going to start by wishing you a belated happy birthday and letting the listeners know that you just celebrated a birthday, giving them extra incentive to hit the like button. So hit the like button to wish Chris a happy birthday. It was Monday, which was also the day that Kevin Adams was relieved of his duties as general manager, a move that I think is I think it's fair to say it was overdue. I think it's fair to say that it is going to be nearly universally celebrated by the fan base. But of course, because it's the Buffalo Sabres and there's a 14-year playoff drought and some skepticism of ownership around here, I think there's questions about what comes next, what it all looks like. And the firing of Adams, to me, is the first obvious, necessary move. But a lot of what we're going to unpack, I think, on this show is what comes next and whether this new, course forward is going to be the one that finally gets them out of the wilderness here and back to, the statement from Terry Pegula was that they want to be a consistently competitive team. And obviously it failed to do so. That is a much lower bar than Terry Pegula set many years ago when he bought the team, with the sole reason of existence being to win a Stanley Cup. They have lowered the bar to just being consistently competitive. They want to get back into the league, basically. I think they never finished higher than 24th in the NHL standings under Kevin Adams, and the hope is that Jarmo Kekalainen can get them back at least into the playoffs and competing, the way the rest of the league does. But it was an interesting week or so as the Kevin Adams tenure came to an end.
Yeah, I was going to say, it didn't just happen overnight. And I'd be curious to kind of better understand the anatomy of the change. But, you mentioned Terry Pegula's statement. And also in that statement, it says the hiring of Jarmo was the result of an extensive search process. But then he saves himself, in which Jarmo stood out as our top choice for the senior advisor position.
I have some
So it's
thoughts
always,
there.
yeah, I guess that's where I was gonna go with this. It seemed like when Kekalainen was brought in over the summer that you can kind of draw this conclusion, right? Like what happened yesterday was eventually going to happen just because of the resume that Kekalainen has compared to what Kevin had and was attempting to build in his 5.5 years on the job. But what are your thoughts? Do you think that this should have been an interim tag, or are you seeing the the move for what it is, and maybe thinking it's the right move.
So if you remember when we had the conversation, I believe the title of the episode is "The Time Has Come," and we were discussing the need to make a transition. I expressed some reservation about the idea of not doing a full search and the process that I thought was that you might be cutting some corners, that maybe, not the ideal process to go about. They haven't done a full general manager search since 2017 when they hired Jason Bottrell. Um, so I expressed some reservation about that at the time. And I understand everyone who is still a little skeptical of the process here because really, ideally, what would have happened is you would have fired Kevin Adams in May and you would have done a full search in May. And that search would have included everybody, right? Up and coming candidates, other, you know, former GMs. It would have included, all the best candidates for the job for the first time since 2017, 8 years, more than half the playoff drought, mind you. That said, I do believe that there was a fairly extensive search for a senior advisor. And Terry Pagula has never hired a general manager with previous experience as a general manager. So if we're to think that Pagula, in making this move, would have been sick of first-time general managers, this would have been the pool of candidates he was picking from anyway. However, those candidates in the spring, early summer, whatever you want to call it, May, June-ish, for the senior advisor job, how many of them said, I don't know, are you ever actually going to fire this guy? Is this really a GM in waiting? Ken Holland, for instance, was one of those candidates. He became general manager of the LA Kings. He's probably becoming general manager of the LA Kings, even if he's offered general manager of the Buffalo Sabres, I think. Kings is a pretty good job. And so you can almost cross that one off the list, regardless of what the circumstance was. But would other guys have been more interested if it was a general manager opening? Maybe. And I'll now underscore all of that in saying Sabres fans should ask themselves if they had fired Kevin Adams in May, gone through with a full search, and landed on Jarmo Kekalainen, how would people have felt? I think they would have felt okay. Others might have had different preferences. There would have been some debate, but I think Kekalainen's resume is pretty solid. You could definitely poke holes in it, but I think he had a lot of good during his time as the Columbus Blue Jackets general manager. That gave him some experience working in a smaller market, trying to attract and retain talent. He made a lot of big trades. He made some mistakes. The hiring of Mike Babcock was not, a great situation for that franchise. He made some, mistakes in trades or failing to retain some free agents and not recouping value for them. But you could poke when you're a when you've been a general manager before and you're on your second try, you've been fired before. So you're going to be able to poke holes in that person's resume, right? That's just the nature of this. But there's a lot about him that I think really fits, and temperament, demeanor, and leadership, I think, are a big part of this as well. So I understand all the potential skepticism that might arise, and this franchise has earned all of it. But that's kind of how I unpacked the whole process by which they landed on Kekalainen, and I think all in all, he's a solid candidate. What comes next does matter, though. who he surrounds himself with, who's behind the bench. This is the first signal that maybe Terry Pegula is taking things seriously. He's finally gotten rid of the guy that he trusted so much, that communicated with him so well, and otherwise didn't have a lot of the traditional qualifications for the job. The bar is pretty low, right? Sabres fans are happy. Sabres fans would be happy with almost anybody replacing Kevin
Well,
Adams. And the fact that
yeah.
this is a guy that doesn't have a previous decades-long relationship with Terry Pegula is a nice start.
Terry referred to Kevin as a reliable presence. I thought that was an interesting choice. Of all the things that you could say, he called him a reliable presence. And I think that speaks volumes of what the expectations are about being heard. Also, that I think that that's still part of Terry's strategy for owning this hockey team, but we can get into more of that interaction down the line because I want to see how they interact. Kikalainen and Pegula, that is, if we even see it. I'm curious if we'll see Terry Pegula today at the press conference, which announces Jarmo Kikalainen as general manager, or will it be Pete Guelli? There's a lot to still learn about Pegula and how he's going to function in all of this. You know, you mentioned, I think that the overwhelming fan sentiment right now in Saberland is that they're just happy that's Kevin. They're more happy that Kevin's gone and less excited that Kikalainen is the general manager. Making a move on December 15th, Kikalainen is probably the best caliber, the top caliber candidate you're going to get right now. And he just happened to be here. So I think it's a decent situation. I think that it's worth being open-minded about. He does have a lot of work to do. And just because, if people are excited that Kevin's gone and maybe anything's better than Kevin, you probably can't say that about the coaching staff. And I think that becomes now one of the things that we should talk about with this team. There's a lot of things to do. We can go through the whole laundry list. Every department is going to be under review, including scouting. But I think the coaching staff, I mean, if we look back in the past year in the timeline, really 2 years, Lindy Ruff comes in. He inherits Don Granato's assistants, basically, with one promotion. They fall short of expectations. Last year, no changes. This is the opportunity to maybe consider a reset if they can do it right. What are your thoughts on that part of this puzzle?
One more thing I'll add before we transition to the coaching staff is you mentioned that Jarmo Kekalainen did not get the interim tag. I actually like that because I don't like the idea of an interim GM any more than I like the idea of Kevin Adams sticking around, honestly. Kekalainen's been here for 7 months. He's been in the organization, getting a look at things. He does not look, an interim tag and then hiring a different guy in the offseason would have delayed the process. And Kekalainen doesn't get the built-in excuse of, I just need to get to know everybody. I just need to figure out everything and get to know these players and get to know these coaches. He already knows them.
He essentially has been an interim.
He kind of has been an interim. This has been his on-the-job audition, right? One difference between him and other senior advisors, he's 59 years old. He's not, he's still in that working age. Whereas
he's not a senior. Yeah, be careful what you say about people in their 50s.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. He's still in his working prime, I would say. Much like my co-host here. And he's not so senior, I think is a good way to put it. That some senior advisors are quite senior. They've, been sitting in their home office. I mean, Rick Dudley is based out of Lewiston and a senior advisor for the Florida Panthers. I don't even know how often he gets down there. There's a wide range of what these jobs look like. In Jarmo's case, he has been here almost daily. He was obviously, he was not on the most recent road trip. He was back home, tending to his ailing father who passed away on Sunday. And that, I thought, had a chance to complicate the timeline on this move, but he will speak today, Tuesday at 10:30. So I'm assuming he flew back. I at least hope he flew back yesterday. I hope he was able to be there on Sunday and that he hadn't already hit the road. But obviously, a complicated emotional time for him, I imagine, getting another shot at his dream job, but also dealing with the loss of his father. But he's been around and he knows everybody now. And
Mhm.
I think what I like, about not bothering with the interim tag is that he gets to hit the ground running. And I think we've maybe talked about this before, but I'm starting to feel like even more and more as time goes by in the NHL, the work of the GM in season is almost more important than
Mhm.
in the off season. And I say that because free agency is not entirely disappearing, but it is not the best way to build a team. And it definitely isn't the best way for the Buffalo Sabres to build a team because they can't attract top talent. And that's not just a Buffalo Sabres problem. That's a problem for a lot of teams.
Yeah, but if you're ever going to take advantage of a market, it's going to be mid-season. Take
It's
advantage of another
midseason.
team.
I mean,
Yeah.
look at what Minnesota just did,
Mhm.
right? That is going to impact their team for years. I mean, 5 to 10 years. Regardless of whether they retain Quinn Hughes, that trade impacts their team for a decade. So, do you want to put the interim tag on a general manager and have him decide on Alex Tuck or Owen Power or Bowen Byram or Jack Quinn or, name your player that you want to get feelers on? Do you want an interim guy doing that job? I don't think you do. Do you want Kevin Adams doing that job? Obviously not. That's why the timing, anybody confused by the timing, which I don't think locally a lot of people are, because the only confusion is why did it take so long? You're on mute.
Yeah, no, I was agreeing with you. What took so damn long?
Right.
Um,
But the timing otherwise makes sense because the work starts now. And to your point, it starts with figuring out this coaching staff, which would be another signal from Terry Pagula that he is taking things seriously. How they handle the coaching staff is going to be pretty interesting to me because there is certainly a case to start fresh. But I do think Lindy Ruff has earned the right to decide what the next steps look like. If he's not behind the bench, at least this season, I mean, Jarmo Kekalainen should get the say there, right? He should get to put his stamp on things. And that's the first big thing he gets to do as general manager is pick a coach. I don't have a problem with Lindy Ruff finishing out this year. And, if this is the final year of his contract, then he kind of gets to decide his future from there. But I do think Jarmo Kekalainen deserves to have, some control over this hockey team. He's in charge of hockey operations, according to the statement, and that should include the coaching staff. The problem is that Terry Pagula did not like firing Lindy Ruff the first time. Lindy Ruff was skeptical about coming back here, decided to come back almost as at least in part, as a favor to Terry Pagula. They have a pretty good relationship, and Lindy Ruff cares about this franchise, wanted to fix it, wanted to get them back to the playoffs. His, legacy here as a player and as a coach the first go around has earned him the right to go out on his own terms. Does that mean he moves into some sort of role in the front office? Maybe. But, could Lindy Ruff help Yarmo find the next coach? I think that would be fine. But I do think Yarmo deserves to have a pretty heavy say in who's next, which is why, you know, the guys that are on the bench, of course, Seth Appert is sort of, was sort of pegged as this potential heir apparent. He hasn't become the most popular. His popularity has gone down since he got on the NHL bench, which tends to happen here in Buffalo, right? Let that be a word of caution to Mike Leone, who's very popular guy as the head coach in Rochester, but Appert comes up, gets tabbed to run the power play, which continues to struggle, and now he gets all sorts of criticism. But I just feel like this could all get messy potentially if Kekalainen is not able to choose his own guy. We got to look for the clues here, right? As we've always done on this show about what they're doing. And a clean, fresh start for Kekalainen would signal that maybe Pagula's stepping back a little bit.
Yeah, I think job one, get the three of them in the cigar lounge there. Pagula, Yarmo, Lindy.
Is there a cigar lounge down there?
It's got to be. It's a country club down there. It's been a country club down there for 15 years. There's got to be. But I think get them in a room and have them talk through it. What are Lindy's desires? What's the plan? There has to be that plan anyways, that exit strategy for Lindy. But
they should all get in the sauna.
Yarmo's
finished.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
You can sweat him out.
There you go.
This is a guy that is he's fit at 59, right? He takes care of himself, which is
he is. Yeah, he looks tight, man. Like he looks like he can still play.
He does look like he can still play, and there's a toughness about him. I do think there is some pushback there, an ability to manage upwards and kind of cut through the BS and tell Pagula how it is.
Yeah, I think just talking through it though and figuring out what give Lindy a voice in this and just kind of see where he's at, what he wants to do. Maybe it's not Lindy choosing what happens for the, who's coaching the team on Thursday or for the balance of the season. It's not his decision and autonomy, but pick his brain on that and the reason I say that is that Yarmo has to assess, is there an outside candidate that's not part of his coaching staff right now? And if it is Seth Appert, which probably is the most likely one of, a head coaching candidate that's here, is that a step back? And by the way, if there's going to be an interim tag at all in this process, it's going to be on the coach if it's Appert in all likelihood, because I don't see how Yarmo can come in, control hockey operations and say, that's my guy right away. And that's not a knock on Appert. So I can see it going both ways. I mean, that's a very tricky decision. You've seen coaches, a change being made. I always go back to Edmonton when they had that horrible start a couple of years ago. They brought in Knobloch, ripped off a series of wins. I forget how many it was. I want to say like 16 or something like that, right? It was something crazy. A coaching staff can spark a team, but so can a change in general manager can spark a team. And not just the whole team, the whole building, a change in general manager, by the way.
This one has.
About it before.
This one has. Yeah, I can say that confidently. I can say that very confidently. I think it started to spark them last week.
So that's what I'm saying, Matt. Like, you don't necessarily have to change the bench, even though we've seen the bench boss lead to good things. It doesn't mean you have to change it if it's not the right decision, like the correct decision. I could see Lindy staying on board and seeing it through behind the bench. It's going to be, that's the first, I think, big decision though, that Kekalainen needs to make amongst several big decisions in the next 6 months. And, so I don't know, like, what are you hearing? Is there anything, do you have thoughts on like, I don't want to say a prediction, but are there breadcrumbs laying around, that Lindy might have a soft landing elsewhere in the organization and go upstairs? Are you expecting a change behind the bench?
I am ready for one. I don't know, obviously I haven't gotten to the point where I'm comfortable reporting that there will be one, but I am ready for it in the event that, they shuffle the decks a little bit. The reason I'm not fully comfortable reporting anything is I don't have it firmed up on exactly what it would look like. And some of that could be the simple fact that there's been some moving pieces here. And Yarmo's been out of the country and Yarmo will have a say in this. Lindy would have a say in this. I mean, you could connect some of the dots. Last week, Lindy teed off on the officials in Edmonton, right? Like, unlike we've ever seen him do before. So was that him, like, getting it all off his chest as he was, knows that maybe I like your point about Lindy deserving a say in this. It's like, I think the big question is how much energy does Lindy have to finish out this season and, continue to do this job? And then from there, does he want to work in the front office? If he does want to work in the front office, I think a smaller role is probably better. Could you see him potentially as a president of hockey ops? Sure. But I wouldn't bank on him being outstanding at that job. I mean, he's been a coach his whole
Yeah.
career, his entire career. And when he became available, when he got fired by the Devils, I wrote a column that the Sabres should bring him in some capacity. And at the time, my thought was have him be some sort of advisor. Give them somebody that has a long track record in the NHL, which they didn't really have in their front office at the time, and just give Terry Pagula somebody to talk to about this team. And he could
I think
still
it's a special advisor to Terry Pagula. It's not a senior advisor. I think it's a
let him sit up in the box
Yeah.
with Terry and kind of, opine on what's going on. But throwing him right into a really big role, to me, and here's why I say that. I'm thinking about the coaching staff, and I'm thinking about Lindy Ruff maybe advising Yarmo on that or advising Terry on that. And why I worry about that is Lindy Ruff has never done this type of job. If that is something that he, ends up in. He's never done it. He has always been a coach. And when you are always a coach and the type of guy Lindy Ruff is, a man of extreme principle, a man of like a really honest, decent, good man, he is going to build relationships with even these coaches, right? Even these coaches who weren't really his picks. They've been in the battles together. They've been fighting through this, going through the adversity, having the post-game beers after wins, riding the plane rides, riding the bus on the way to the rink. Like, they've been in it. And that stuff matters to Lindy Ruff. So those relationships, could he see through it? Maybe. But my point is he's never done that yet. He hasn't had any time to be that guy who becomes their boss and makes the clear-headed decisions on that type of, deck shuffling. And so it's so much easier for Yarmo to do that. He doesn't know these guys. Well, he knows them, but he hasn't been in the foxhole with them for very long, and not in the same way that Lindy Ruff has. He hasn't been on the bench with them, and they're not his guys.
No.
They're not his guys. And look, if Yarmo is going to get to do this job, if he's going to have a chance, what matters, and it's why I said at the top, what matters a lot is what comes next. And if he's going to have a chance, he's got to be able to make some of these decisions. He's got to have a say in this because, to your point, coaching can swing things really big, even in the course of a season. Part of why we had the conversation when we did about Kevin is they weren't totally toast. They're still not totally toast. They're close, but the East is a mess, and you go on a run and you never know. This has lifted a weight off of the organization at all levels that badly needed to be lifted. It's a welcome change in the locker room. It's a welcome change. I won't pretend to say it's a welcome change from universally. I don't know every single guy's opinion, but I think locker room sentiment will be overall positive. And I would say the same on the business side, on the
It's a brand
locker room.
revitalization opportunity, big time. We talked about
I don't
that
know.
when
I'm sure there are people in the business side of this that like Kevin and feel badly about this, and maybe some people who don't like it because of the long relationships that Kevin has built over the years. But to your point, I mean, if you're in ticket sales, you have to love this.
We talked about this, like the problems with keeping Kevin around impacted every part of the organization.
How many people, people in ticket sales, how many of the people that are calling to cancel or hanging up the phone when the ticket people call say, call me when Kevin's fired? Well,
Yeah.
they're probably dialing today, right? Like the ticket people are probably working that Thursday game. I'm guessing they'll get a nice little bump, simply for the fact that Kevin's not there. Nobody has to worry about Fire Adams' chance. The players don't have to worry about that. Like all of this, some of this is Kevin's fault. Some of it's not, right? Like the way his public reputation went off the rails. But some of that was very much his own doing. But I think what I can state for sure is that leadership from him was a problem over the last few years. And that is the most important quality that Yarmo brings to the table. The leadership. We could go through Kevin Adams' resume line by line, look at his trades, nitpick his roster build. None of it really matters because at the end of the day, the team didn't make the playoffs, right? The team was not good enough. His plan was not good enough. He made some big picture mistakes. He made some smaller picture mistakes, micro and macro. He did some good things, but what ultimately failed him was his vision and his leadership, his inability to act proactively, and his leadership at all levels. When the pressure increased, he became a different person, and not in a good way. And that press conference last year was part of it, but it was really more that was like a result or a symptom, I guess, right? That was showing what had already started, that the pressure was getting to him. I think how he handled even Don Granado's exit, and kind of throwing him under the bus, like even though he had fired him probably months too late, and then even at the same time as firing him, admitting that he saw it in training camp, and so never acting decisively, never acting proactively, and then allowing the pressure and the outside criticism to impact who he was and how he led. I think those were his failings that Yarmo can definitely change. And so I don't even know how this sort of rant started, how we kind of got down this rabbit hole, but
Coaching.
but the fresh start and the jolt that this can provide is significant. That could continue to the coaching staff, right? That could, but I think this alone has already done that. So that's where Yarmo doesn't need to, if he doesn't have his own guy in place by Thursday, I'm not thinking that's an issue.
No.
But and even if Lindy's done, like maybe he says, look, I've reached the end of the rope here, and I kind of want to step aside, go out on my own terms. If he's reached that point, to your point, you put the interim on
Appert.
Seth Appert and let Yarmo figure out the coaching staff in due time, unless he's really zeroed in on somebody already. But I don't have a problem with them waiting a little bit on that. It's not necessarily priority number one, but he should have the ability to put his stamp on things for sure.
I wonder if Yarmo talks to his leadership in the players as a small group, not a committee. I'm not saying that, but I'm sure he already has, by the way. And I'm sure Lindy and Yarmo have already spoken.
Oh,
moves like this just don't happen. Okay.
No,
Like
yeah.
I bet, as more things are learned, we may find that Lindy and Yarmo, I'm not saying they had a coalition or anything like that, but I mean, I'm sure there was dialogue there. They're two respected personalities in the game. They knew the writing was on the wall. I don't want to go too deep on that and like make accusations or anything like that, because that's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying that this won't be like a new conversation, I'm sure. But does Yarmo talk to the players and also kind of get another he wants that 360-degree feedback, right, on all the information he needs to make the right decision in the coaching staff. Here's one I got 4 words for you. Settle in with me on this one. New coach, Marty Wilford. What do you think of that? How does that sound? Okay,
That
I
would
kid.
destroy all the goodwill that they built up.
I know.
with
Could
this
you
year.
imagine if Yarmo's like, I'm happy to announce Marty Wilford as the next head coach of the Buffalo Sabres?
Oh
Not
man,
picking
that
on
would
Marty.
be
It's just like, let's just get Owen Power right first, right? Let's get Byram to the next level before he adds another title to his resume. But anyways, say Apper is the interim, and you and I have to develop a list. We don't have to get into the list right now, but I mean, if Appert is a guy, say Lindy wants to move upstairs, Appert comes in interim, and maybe it doesn't go so great. Maybe Yarmo's not convinced at the end of the season that he's the guy to take this Buffalo Sabres hockey team moving forward. You got to start identifying, maybe you got to do it anyways with Lindy. Either way, you got to have your bench ready. A couple names that I think everyone wants to talk about. And again, Jay McKee. By the way, I'm not convinced that a first-time head coach is going to be the right head coach for this team moving forward. Just like you want a experienced general manager running the ship, you probably need an experienced coach running the bench. That was the intention with Lindy. But a first-time head coach could also work. Younger, relatable, knows how to communicate to this generation of player. Jay McKee's out there. He has 2 years left on his deal with Brantford in the OHL. Interesting tidbit. When Jay McKee signed with the St. Louis Blues as an unrestricted free agent on July 1st, 2006, I believe Jarmo Kekalainen was a member of that St. Louis Blues front office.
He was the assistant general manager. So
interesting.
Pretty
right?
high up.
It implies that there's some kind of relationship there, maybe some trust that was built. Of course, it didn't work out perfectly for Jay McKee when he went there, oft injured, got bought out, ended his career, I think, in Pittsburgh. Other names, could Jarmo Kekalainen be the guy that gets a David Carl? Low probability, but does he have the swag? Does he have the juice and the vision to sell a David Carl? Kekalainen's got a lot of selling to do.
He does have a lot of selling to do.
Just a couple other names I just want to throw out there. I don't think Jason Nightingale's ready yet. No, well, not. Oh, damn it. It's not. Jason works for the Sabres. It's Adam Nightingale. Jason's working here right now. Adam Nightingale coached at Michigan State. I always get it mixed up. Up and comer in the USA Hockey program. Have they had enough of the USA Hockey guys? Who knows, right? That's always possible.
Maybe.
But I mean, well, he's been more. Ole Jokinen maybe would be interesting, right?
Keep
Head
the
coach of the
European
Pittsburgh
flavor
Rangers is another one from with Finnish roots, UC Hokus. I mean, that could be a good one. So there's a couple names there. I mean, again, he'd be another first timer, another guy that's right up the road though in Kitchener. Decorated.
If you're looking at the experienced guy, Pete DeBoer, John Tortorella. Tortorella obviously has some ties to Jarmo from their time in Columbus.
Pete DeBoer, Southern Ontario native?
I believe that's correct. Let's take a look.
Southern Ontario native.
Dunnville.
Dunnville is close.
Yeah, that's pretty close, actually.
Yeah, Pete. So maybe. You want to get a guy that might mismanage your goaltenders, I mean, he's not going to help you get out of a 3 goaltender situation, but that's another thing that Jarmo.
You'll have 0 by the time.
Yeah,
by the time he's done with them.
But there's, I guess, let's keep our short list going. Let's build a short list. I mean, there will be more red hot assistants, whatever, that emerge throughout the course of the season, but it's not just coaching that Jarmo has to look at and analyze. I mean, he has a pretty critical unrestricted free agent pending UFA to deal with here. He's got some key RFAs, right? But in the bigger picture, I mean, what do you think Jarmo is looking at? I mean, he's got to change the image of this team.
He does.
Internally and externally.
I think you got to start internally, right? You got to start with Tuck. There's no more. I would even say that's more important than coaching to me is figuring out what's going on there, because there's a timeline on that being the trade deadline. Because if you're too far gone with Alex Tuck at this point, then you need to start thinking about what's out there as far as trade packages. But I don't think it's too far gone. I
I
have
don't
a
think it
feel
is either.
I
No.
have a feeling
No.
this is going to help. I have a feeling this could speed things up. And when I discussed Yarmo's ability to manage up, I think he has the ability to go to Pagula and say, look, this is the league. We need to do, whatever signing bonus structure Kevin Adams was comfortable with, was certainly something that made Terry Pagula comfortable, right? Yarmo, I think, can push him outside of his comfort zone potentially and tell him, look, if you want to keep this player, this is what it's going to take. This is what the market says. I think Alex Tuck will be more open to signing if he sees the vision that Kekalainen has. And
Also a conversation that's probably already been had.
I think so. Yeah. Would I would certainly think that's been had for sure. And so if you can convince Alex Tuck, you then start to convince Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin. That's the knee-jerk reaction from a lot of hockey media outside Buffalo is how long before those guys get sick of this. I don't think they're going to be that tough of a sell. I don't think it requires keeping Tuck, but I think keeping Tuck helps. And I don't think they're in for any sort of major rebuild here. It's not
No.
it's not, because that's another question people have outside of
No, it's
Buffalo
not
is like,
required.
new GM, is he going to tear it down, buy himself some time? Not really Yarmo's style, right? Like, I think Yarmo is an aggressive, bold decision maker, willing to build this thing on the fly, and they've already been building it. They have a lot of high picks. They have a lot of young players that they've been developing. The roster is not that far off from being a playoff team, probably pretty far off from being a Stanley Cup contender. But the playoff, being a competitive team, not that far off. And part of why this move was made from Kevin Adams, by the way, is that like the business reality of the situation that we talked about multiple times. But I think there was a recognition ultimately that it was just not a sustainable situation. And you can't be going into your own building and dealing with the chance. A lot of people kept saying, over the last year or so, stop buying tickets, right? Stop buying tickets. And that's the best way to send your message to Terry Pagula. To an extent, the attendance had to have played a role, right? They're really fighting to get more people in that building, but attendance has actually gone up this year, at least in the raw data. Whether it's paid attendance or whatever else, who knows? But I also think, to an extent, the passion, the chance, the the anger from the fan base played a role. Finally cut through to ownership, and that is, something that I think is worth pointing out, that this market still has the passion and still has that type of energy for um, for this team, for this sport, and I do think it was ultimately heard. But now, you get a different environment here. You get a more positive environment for some of these players, and you get to see Yarmo's vision. I don't worry too much about their ability to retain Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin. And the business piece of it is why I don't envision a rebuild, because I think the operating mission is to get back to the playoffs and get that revenue as soon as possible, fill the building,
Mhm.
and get back to the playoffs and get playoff ticket sales and playoff, beer saber sales and Parm Thompson sales and whatever other revenue they get in the playoffs. Like, they need that. And so Yarmo's not going to be tearing this thing down. And so, yeah, it starts with Tuck and then it continues with Thompson and Nalin. And from there, getting Benson and Doan locked up among their other restricted free agents that they have to deal with.
Yeah, this is not a roster that needs to be stripped down to the studs. It's not. I know where they are in the standings. Ironically tied for last place with Jarmo Kekalainen's former employer. I wonder what Kekalainen thinks looking at the standings right now. You see Buffalo, and the only one below them technically is Columbus due to goal differential. He's probably like, "Huh, I've done a really, I've been killing
all
it.
over it.
I've been killing it." No, so it's going to be interesting press conference this morning, 10:30 a.m. And look, there's more to talk about, obviously, with this team. I don't want to go too deep right now because I think we're going to come back pretty quickly with another episode and kind of debrief after Yarmo's press conference. There's a game on Thursday. We have to kind of see how things play out here in the next couple of days. We had a gap in shows. So if you're happy that we're back and you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button. Show us that you missed us. But, Matthew was on the road last week. And I had some other things going on. I had some travel also. So we had a little gap in shows, but we are going to be back to normal here with the schedule. We should probably leave some meat on the bone, Matthew,
We should.
for, what's coming. Cause there's
And we're
more
gonna
to
have,
talk about.
I think we're gonna have more answers soon. And part of the gap in shows was due to that as well, right? There was some, Thursday was sort of what we were potentially targeting, but I was jammed up pretty much all day trying to chase down this story. And it's tricky to get on the podcast when everything isn't totally firmed up, right? Like the priority is getting the information onto the pages of the Athletic and then being able to discuss it here and all that. So
I didn't get home from Atlanta that day until close to 8:00 at night anyways. And trust me, I wasn't dying to do another live show at 8:00.
there was too much up
day.
in the air. So there was too much up in the air anyways. And then I was out of Vancouver at 6 a.m. Vancouver time. So, and all, was writing the story, the story that came out on Friday afternoon, the entire time I was on the plane. So, and even up until when I got off the plane, on the phone and, figuring stuff out. So that was part of it. And we could have gone yesterday morning, but I think we both agreed that getting the firm news was going to make it an easier show to just kind of let everything out there and discuss it fully without, I did the Athletic hockey show on Sunday night, and I did Jeff Merrick's show yesterday, and we were still in that pattern of if it's Jarmo Kekalainen and if it's this, so we were able to discuss it in full. And being back on the Eastern time zone were easier for me to get back in this morning routine, the cadence of multiple shows. So that was part of the reason for the gap too, is just that had to get the story, had to try to pin it down.
The first domino has fallen. Now let's see which other ones are next. That's going to be it's going to be an interesting next couple of weeks and months with this Buffalo Sabres franchise for certain. Like I said, everything gets under review with a change like this in leadership. And can't wait to talk about it with you, Matthew Fairburn. Let's do your plugs and let's get us out of here on time this morning.
Yeah, people can head to theathletic.com/Sabres as always and find all of our work there. I have a column up this morning on the weight that's been lifted, but the heavy lift still ahead for Jarmo Kekalainen and some of the items on his to-do list. And I will be down at KeyBank Center for the press conference today, and we'll have coverage on all of this to come and what else might be coming in the next few days, and we'll see how this team responds. But it's going to be an interesting season. Good to be back here with you. First show of your 50s. I think you've still got it.
We'll see if I still got it. I'm eager to see what dominoes fall there as well. I don't know. I still got a pretty good heater, I think. We'll see. Hey, last question real quick before we get out of here. Do you think that and this is not a shot at Kevin, he is a cherished member of the Buffalo community, but do you think that
cherished
there'll be a little party in the plaza? Are the fans going to have a little party in the plaza?
I thought about that. I feel like I'm interested to see sort of the emotional release, maybe the I don't know if they'll go so far as to be chanting "Thank you, Terry," or maybe it's a Yarmo chant or something. I sense that there might be some level of excitement shared, by people. And um, one thing I should mention, because people asked about this, and I did tweet it, but I never really got around to answering people in the comments. Kevin Adams did have another year left on his contract, and I don't know exactly if that was an extension at some point or if there was an option in his deal, or exactly what that was, but have that on pretty good authority that there was an extra year on his contract, which is weird because in reporting that story in the summer, I was told that this was the final year of his deal. So maybe something happened between then and now. But Terry Pagula fired a guy with time left on his deal. So, and relieved him of his duties. So far as we know, although I wouldn't have expected that in the initial press release, right? We're going to move Kevin over here. That might be something that they kind of just try to sneak onto the staff page in a couple of months. But yeah, party in the plaza might be warranted here.
They don't want to tell. Yeah, maybe Terry is keeping him around. They just don't want to tell people that he's actually going to be in the Sabretooth costume.
Right.
Balance of the season.
He'll be getting his revenge. You're like, why is Sabretooth starting fights?
Why is he all pissed off? So anyways. All right. Well, for Matthew Fairburn, you heard him. You can find everything that he's been doing over at theathletic.com/Sabres. One last plug for the holiday season. Get over there. Best value subscription you can get on the internet online. So more to come from us, though, also for the production crew who is excited to go and start a bonfire there in the parking ramp. I'm sure they were pretty fired up, that production crew, at yesterday's news. I'm Chris Baker. We'll be back again very soon, continuing on this journey of what is the 2025-26 Buffalo Sabres season. Excited to see what comes next.